Hello and welcome to Heavy Hands. I'm Connor. That's Phil.
Hello.
If you hear the sound of thunder outside my window at any point during this recording, never fear. It's just the wrath of the gods. Because the UFC is returning to the Apex Center after the triumph of the... oh, no, wait. This one's in France. Fuck you, France. I literally looked at this without even checking the location and said, Apex card, obviously. I should have known with all the French fighters.
Well, I was going to say.
Yeah, right. It's pretty obvious if you think about it for more than 2 seconds. But
There's a running theme here.
But it doesn't necessarily feel the way these sort of travel cards used to, does it? It's I suppose it is in line with some of the older European cards. When they went to, like, wasn't there an event in Poland?
Yeah, there might have been.
I think there was in, like, Danzig or something, and they went and...
yeah, they've been to, like, Poland and Germany and a few other places.
Yeah, I remember. It was definitely in Danzig because there was a whole thing about MMA fans, including myself, struggling to pronounce Gdansk. And those cards kind of looked like this. You know, they're kind of scraping up whatever European fighters they had. And they surely have more now, but now they're really focusing on the French aspect, and you get to find out that they have a decent number of good French fighters. A decent number of decent French fighters. Look, it's not a terrible card. But it is certainly what the French deserve. I think on that we can agree. In addition to that, I should mention the main event first. Renato Moicano and Benoit Saint-Denis. That's the main event. And there's some other good ones on here too. And in addition to that, in fact, I think before getting to any of the undercard of that, we are going to pause and take a little visit into the land of boxing, where Daniel Dubois just absolutely obliterated Anthony Joshua. The battle for who gets to fight Alexander Usyk, assuming he beats Tyson Fury a second time, continues. And Daniel Dubois, at only 27 years old, much younger than Usyk or Fury or Joshua or any of them, may in fact be the guy who's still around at the top when all these other great fighters are gone. So we're going to talk about that, and then we'll return to the Accor Arena in France to wrap up the undercard scraps here, the best the French have to offer the UFC. First up, Renato Moicano, Benoit Saint-Denis. I've been terrible at calling Moicano fights. So I'm already afraid. What do you make of this appointment for the Frenchman?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Doubtless.
I don't think there's a way that these two match up that is going to be boring. Like, you could conceivably see some kind of way in which, I guess, maybe Moicano could just control him on the outside and just low kick him a bunch. But even then, I don't think Saint-Denis, who is in some ways part of the new Dricus meta of not being super good.
He's hyper aggressive, powerful, strong, willing to be hit.
Yeah.
That's his MO.
Just a big aggressive hoss, is going to be trying to, push the issue as much as possible, and will get himself into trouble if he starts getting into trouble. You know, he'll throw himself face first into the fire. That's exactly what he did against Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
And that does make it such a weird fight to call against Renato Moicano, who remains this completely inexplicable mix of, physically somewhat frail, mentally extremely tough, very well-rounded, incredibly vulnerable in certain areas. Just as you said, just an extremely difficult fighter to call. I mean, based on pure skills, I would tend to favor Renato Moicano.
Yeah.
He is someone who can he's got multiple ways that he can control a fight. He can keep someone stranded on the end of his jab and low kick. He can out-wrestle people. He's really good from top position. And Benoit Saint-Denis is just not that... is like just not defensively there.
Yeah. He's a complete void defensively.
Yeah. So, and it's just entirely possible that, Moicano could just control him for a fight. But that's the other thing about Moicano. I mean, particularly as a lightweight, is that he does sort of have to control people for large amounts of time. Is that he doesn't typically finish them at this level.
No.
Especially, lightweights, unless they've got like a massive vulnerability to submissions. And that sort of makes his vulnerability all the more stark. You know, the Drew Dober fight was one where Moicano should have been winning it in many ways more easily than he was, but it was just the fact that every time they got back onto the feet, he was getting buzzed.
Yeah, he got instantly hurt in the fight with Jalen Turner that followed that one. A front kick to the body, if I remember correctly, and had to go for a takedown, which, credit to Moicano for doggedness, and actually having an ability to turn a bad shot into like a series of attacks that do ultimately result in a takedown. I gotta wonder how well that would have worked against someone other than Jalen Turner, who, as we know from like his fight with Mateusz Gamrot, like Turner doesn't have a bad first layer of takedown defense, but the longer you tie up with him and continue testing his balance, the more likely you are to get him down. Again, this is a credit to Moicano, and it is crazy as a former featherweight that he has the strength and the conditioning to play these kinds of games against lightweights. I mean, granted, he's more than the right size for lightweight. He did, in fact, have to go up. He couldn't make featherweight anymore. Or that happened, right? Or was he just getting knocked out?
I mean, if you look at him now, it seems like there's no way he could possibly make.
Oh, for sure. He absolutely filled out. Yeah. For some reason in my mind, I was thinking he was missing weight, but now that I think about it more, I'm not sure that actually happened. I think he might have just realized there was no hope for him at 145, draining himself as he was.
Mm-hmm.
But he certainly has the conditioning and the strength to grapple with the lightweights he's faced. But he is not going against people who are known for beating grapplers. Let's put it that way. Drew Dober, Jalen Turner. Of course, he lost to an old Rafael dos Anjos, in 2022. In large part because he had no ability to out-grapple him. So, I suppose that is the chief question for me. Can he actually out-grapple Benoit Saint-Denis?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Benoit Saint-Denis good at defending takedowns?
I suppose it hasn't really been tested. Usually it's Saint-Denis taking his opponent down. He seems like a pretty strong wrestler, not a particularly sophisticated one, but he's certainly very comfortable on the ground, and is an absolute hoss. So to me, the gut impulse is this looks a little closer in that one regard to the RDA fight than to the other ones, than to the likes of Drew Dober and Jalen Turner. On the other hand, I see no reason to think that Benoit Saint-Denis has learned any lesson yet, until I see it, from his loss to Dustin Poirier. Mm-hmm. Which was really completely decided by Saint-Denis assuming he could pour everything into the effort to overwhelm Dustin Poirier and win. Like, not realizing that there's a level at which you can't just go all out. And he just exhausted himself. And that was really what, the way I saw it, that was what precipitated the KO. And if he goes too hard, because he's probably going to hurt Moicano, right? Like, that seems almost certain. He's going to dash out there and throw a big left body kick, and then he's going to throw a big left hand, and Moicano is going to get caught, like, trying to swing some counter, and they're going to end up grappling. To me, the question is not even, I think Saint-Denis can handle himself. Probably in some scrambles or some takedown attempts. It's a question of, do they go on long enough that he gets worn out? Another question.
Yes, I'm trying to
How's Renato Moicano's guillotine? Because that was
a good point.
Really close to working for Dustin Poirier.
Yeah, I don't know if I've actually seen. I mean, that was another one of the things is that, like, I think one of the things that made Moicano's fight against RDA a bit of a problem was that he was fighting someone who was a very similar archetype to him.
Yeah.
Is that, he really works best as a top position, wrestler and grappler. RDA is exactly the same and is just much more used to it. In terms of, like, the way they fight on the feet.
Yeah.
They both sort of like to maintain a given slice of range and throw sort of strikes in from there. It just happened to be that, like, RDA's slice of range is just that bit closer and more potent than Saint-Denis'. It was just all these, like, little touches that ended up adding up to a quite dominating performance.
It was also a short notice. Short notice fight for Moicano, it should be said.
But yeah, I'm still trying to think of, like, when have we seen Saint-Denis' wrestling tested? So I think against Doug and Moises, Moises shot and completed a takedown on him when and this was when Moises had been doing Moises things and hanging out, doing not very much for a while, and was by this point, like, quite tired and beaten up. And still, I ran Saint-Denis across the cage and took him down, but then, Saint-Denis got butterflies and reversed the position, and then, like, he was just completely done. So yeah, obviously he fought Matt Frivola, but that was when I think Matt Frivola had fully gone into his "I'm just a knockout artist puncher" kind of thing.
Matt Frivola is always one shot on the chin away from being in that mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen of Saint-Denis getting taken down, I think that Moises fight might be the only one. He does at least immediately create a scramble with a sweep attempt. Granted, I do think
Frivola did take him down. They had a scramble. So I think, So Saint-Denis took him down, then Frivola reversed position, and then picked Saint-Denis up and dropped him in the middle of the cage.
Okay.
But he has been. Yeah, and then Saint-Denis gets up, and then as they disengage, Saint-Denis boots him in the head, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean,
one of the things is that he's obviously extremely fast at fighting his way back to his feet.
Yeah.
Goes for, as I said, double butterflies, looks to sweep and stand very fast, and does it, being Benoit Saint-Denis, with 100% commitment.
Yes. Yeah. And while I think Moicano is genuinely a very, very strong, controlling grappler in top position, I don't really know how well to rate that, given who it's happened against. Drew Dober and Jalen Turner, neither of whom are great takedown defenders or good at getting back to their feet. They've, particularly Drew Dober has lost numerous fights, by just getting stuck in bottom position. So at the very least, being a big, strong beast and instantly refusing to accept a takedown, I think puts Saint-Denis in better stead. And then otherwise, Saint-Denis is, usually the one out grappling his opponents. You know, he took down, controlled for a bit, choked out, Ismael Bonfim. Of course, he took Dustin Poirier down 9 million times with a little help from Dustin Poirier. It has to be said.
Yep.
But this is a 5-round fight. So I guess maybe even more than can Moicano out-grapple Saint-Denis? The prime question really should be, can Moicano survive? Because if he does, I just don't trust Saint-Denis to maintain. I don't think he can maintain the way he fights. Again, maybe he'll do something different, after the Poirier loss, but I don't have a great deal of confidence that something different would necessarily be very good either. I don't think, that level of like ingrained aggression is something you unlearn that quickly. Like if he has been spending this training camp preparing to fight differently, is he going to have any kind of sophistication at not being a crazy meathead? Is he going to be capital T technical? Like MMA fighters really struggle to strike this balance. And and that's assuming that he's changed anything. For all I know, he may go out there and just try to obliterate Moicano and get tired again.
And that is the other thing about Moicano, which makes him a bit of a paradox, is that despite some of that physical fragility, it was, I think, the 5th round in the RDA fight, which was by far his best.
Yeah.
Where he actually, really went after RDA and absolutely went for it, despite the fact that he'd been getting mostly smoked up until that point.
Yeah.
So he really, if he's not getting, one of those guys where he's not getting put out, he is going to be making the fight hell for his opponent.
Yeah. And most of these lightweights are not putting him out. The only one who's actually managed it was Fiziev. Other than that, all the knockout losses were back down at featherweight. He's been getting hurt constantly, but nobody's actually finishing him. Now, maybe the reason they're not finishing him, in fact, this is the reason they're not finishing him, is that they hurt him, and then he goes for a takedown, and it stalls things out. Maybe that is the key difference with Saint-Denis. That he hurts Moicano. Moicano has to save his bacon by going for usually a pretty ugly shot attempt, and Saint-Denis just shucks him off and resumes finishing him.
Yeah, exactly what happened with Moises.
Yeah. So, that might put a limit on the survivability that Moicano has displayed.
Yeah. I think when it comes down to it, so I think Moicano is essentially a better striker, a better grappler. I trust him to stay the distance more consistently. I know that he can fight 5 rounds at a more measured pace. But I know that he can also withstand a high pace. There's pretty much every area of MMA I would say that he probably has a small technical edge on Saint-Denis. I'm going to pick Saint-Denis.
I'm really tempted to as well. My gut.
It's the Dricus era.
Yeah. That's just
he's just going to be like, he's going to club him. And it'll work. It'll just be super ugly.
Yeah. That's a great bait and switch, Phil.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in my mind while you were talking, formulating like, once I think of the possibility of Moicano getting hurt and not really having a good way out, I'm like, oh no. I have to pick the dumb brute who's like definitely going to get tired.
You don't have to.
I'm sorely tempted to, is the thing. I think I'll take Denis too.
Remember the last time this happened?
Yeah.
With, what's his face? The monster against, everyone's new favorite brawler.
I don't know what you're talking about. None of these words are helping me at all.
You remember we were having the argument between, a mild argument between, picks for, who's he? The guy who got the elbow KO after the other dude took his back for the entire first, first round.
Well, it wasn't a KO. Michael Morales? He got a knockdown on Neil Magny with the elbow.
No.
A different elbow comeback from having your back taken?
Yeah, there were two guys, and, one of them's basically he's on the longest knockout streak in the UFC at the moment.
I don't know. My brain is empty. It's a low energy day, Phil. I'll tell you what, listeners. Stay tuned. We're going to come up with these names after the break so that you don't have to spend the last 5 minutes of this segment hearing us try to think of a name. We're old, all right? Did you, Phil, when we had Simon on the last week and I talked to him, I was like, this is a guy. I said just sort of very casually at the end of our discussion, let me tell you something, kid. And I was like, well, you're probably the same age as me. Guess how old that motherfucker is?
He is 23.
21.
21. Ooh, blimey.
Blimey is right. Yeah.
You are correct.
That one really got me. It's like, fucking hell. And here I am being like, who was the guy who, he did the thing. Yep. You two will become your annoying parents, Simon, and all you other young listeners out there. This too will be your fate.
Born in 2001.
Oh, God.
Wait, sorry, 2003.
Oh, God. Well, we're both going to pick Benoit Saint-Denis, and we're going to come up with a parallel to justify and rationalize that pick after the break, when we will also be talking about Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
All right. Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. This happened at an event which apparently also bears the Riyadh season branding. I just noticed. This is not something exclusive to the UFC. Like, I knew the Turkey Al Sheikh guy or whatever his name is out there doing a lot of like Saudi Arabian branding and funding of various sports, including other combat sports. I didn't realize that Riyadh season in particular, that's why it felt so clunky attached to the already clunky name of UFC Noche. Because they had to put that exact phrase, just sort of stick it on the branding, I guess. Anyway, they've funded Anthony Joshua's demise because he took on...
I will say, one thing about this, about around Saudi Arabia's, disastrous 2033 plan, and I can't believe how close we're getting to that. They've only got like 9 years left to radically transform Saudi Arabia and
they're going to build that city,
reduce reliance on oil revenues to 1/3 and make 1/3 from tourism and 1/3 from, I think, arms sales, which I think was the original plan. 9 years left. And one thing that the Panic is doing is obviously just splurging insane amounts of money into the combat sports and also, like in a related way, the esports worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, they've got to try and do something with it, whether it's making giant, long cities or, putting together fights that people actually want to see. This is one of the, weird, ways in which it's actually worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't manage to, because of the way the UFC works, they didn't manage to put together a ton of fights that people really wanted to see for that one, did they?
No.
But they did get a light show.
I'm assuming they did foot a lot of the bill that managed to, that allowed them to go to the Sphere, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, probably. Dana's out there publicly complaining about how much money he spent. Meanwhile, like, half of it, at least, is coming directly from Saudi Arabia. That seems likely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not called Dana season, is it?
Well, you know what? I'd say money better spent here. Daniel Dubois and Anthony Joshua had a really high stakes fight. Because it was on my mind, the moment I turned this video on, I was just, honestly, like, this is the norm, which is why I don't normally have this reaction, but I was thinking about it. I was just blown away by the wonderful feeling of atmosphere that big boxing fights have. You can just see an entire arena full of people. The whole place is lit, and it just feels like a huge event is happening. So, again, the money didn't go towards the production for this. It went towards paying the comparatively higher purses of the fighters and getting the venue, I'm sure. But Anthony Joshua got obliterated by Daniel Dubois. People say that there's a lot boxing can teach MMA, but I think MMA has taught boxing something. Through the conduit of Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua has learned MMA defense.
Yes.
And he's pretty good at it. I gotta say, for a novice, that is how it's done.
Good turning and running, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, he mostly remained facing Dubois, you know, so he's still got a ways to go before he's a real MMA fighter. He mostly remained facing Dubois while trying to get away from him. But this was, in fact, a spectacularly bad defensive performance from Anthony Joshua, paired with a really very solid jab and right hand focused performance from Daniel Dubois.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what it made me think of is Muhammad Ali versus Ken Norton. Because it struck me that Joshua kind of fights like a tall guy.
Yes.
A lot of leaning back, a lot of sort of dropping back out of range without, you know, with his hands down, with his chin in the air, feet getting out of position, not presenting a threat, which his corner did chide him over. They said, you're getting hit because you're circling in a non-threatening way. But this fight really did feel like somebody who was continually surprised that the opponent, who was building everything off of a strong jab, was able to hit them when they thought they were out of range. There were some other things to contribute to that. Like it just seemed like a really unfocused performance from Anthony Joshua. He was straight up like Garcia Haney. How Haney was like just not responding to the threat of the left hook. Like the glove was just not there to block it. He wasn't even like flinching it in there and reacting when the left hook wasn't coming, which is what you expect, right? Somebody gets hit by something over and over, they start over anticipating it. But Joshua didn't seem to anticipate almost anything Dubois threw at him. Hardly ever, like, he never picked the right hand up just to catch the jab. It landed almost every time Dubois threw it. So, on the one hand, it felt like a tall man getting surprised that his opponent had long-range tools and was able to close the gap. On the other hand, it did feel like just a weirdly off performance from Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, and I think, you know, at this point we can kind of expect those to at least some extent from Anthony Joshua. I think there are a few things going on with him A, that he can be a bit hot and cold. I mean, B, that he just doesn't take shots very well.
Yeah, I mean...
And that he's just still, we said it every time, he's just a kind of clunky, awkward fighter.
Yep.
He just never looks sort of fluid. He never looks that quick. At his very best, he looks well schooled.
Yeah.
And this was not his best.
No.
This was him looking, at his best, he can look sort of textbook. At his worst, he just looks tremendously uncomfortable. And that was most of him for this fight. I also do think that, he was starting to do better in the first round, and then he was clipped and he never recovered, similarly to the first fight against Ruiz. I think he was just, badly hurt for pretty much the entire rest of the fight.
Yeah, I think that's...
But even then, it had not been a good performance up until that point. Yeah, it was the fact that Dubois was throwing a kind of up jab, and then was a lot of the time he was quite sticky with it as well, sort of holding and coming in after his jab, and it just meant that he would raise his elbow, which meant that Joshua would trying to counter it with the right, and it would just bounce off his arm.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Dubois. Again, this was a rock solid performance from him.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as you said, it was a very, very strong performance for, Joshua, I think, got increasingly dialed in on the idea that he had to, similarly to, Ortega last week, he was, the worse he fell behind, the more he was I've got to do something massive to bring it back.
Right.
And so the more predictable he came, and the less he was able to just, slowly dig himself out of the hole.
Yeah. There was obviously a point. It was a huge double swing in the fifth round when the knockout occurred, where he hurt Dubois. He hit him with a really big right hand, a very nice straight right hand, one of the better ones he threw in the fight, because every time he threw a looping right hand or his uppercut, he got countered by Dubois' right hand, which was much shorter and more compact. He threw a really nice straight one after landing a really stiff jab. He jabbed Dubois, he took a step to his left, and then he feinted to get in with the jab and rocketed a right hand across his chin. And in that moment, I was thinking of Ryan Bader, Glover Teixeira. Because that was the amount of nuance that went into Joshua's, at that point, both excited but also desperate attempt to make this the end of the fight. Yeah. Right? He had hurt Dubois, no question about that. But it has to be said, Dubois, even in that moment after being hurt, was handling himself much better than Joshua when he was getting tagged. He got his feet back under him. He backed up to the ropes because he needed the space to recover. The next right hand that hit him, there was another one, and he kind of rolled it off. He saw it coming, and then he countered with a right hand, and then Joshua felt it. He stumbled. He reset his feet and loaded up on a ludicrously huge right uppercut, and Dubois just countered him with the right hand again and slept him. But there was definitely, in that moment of, Joshua had kind of worked his way, he was starting to work his way back into the fight with the jab, but then he had the success with the right and he just couldn't resist putting everything into trying to finish when it was not called for. He needed to take his time in that moment more than anything else, especially because that right hand that knocked him out really flattened him, was perfectly placed, and he ran into it. It was far from the heaviest shot he'd eaten that night, though. I think really speaks to the accumulation of damage and how he was in no position to be trading punches so soon after those disastrous first 4 rounds.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, he's. I felt bad for him because obviously he was trying his heart out there, but it just wasn't the right approach, and Dubois was ready.
Yeah.
He just couldn't, it just wasn't ever going to work out for him, that he was just going to be swinging with him over and over again. And yeah, I think that puts him at 4-3 in his last 7. And he's lost to Ruiz and beaten Ruiz and lost to
Usyk twice. Yeah.
Yep.
Though had one of his best ever performances in the rematch against Usyk.
Yeah. And then that's the thing, is that you watch this fight and you think, especially as you said, like at that point where he just starts jabbing. Those points where he just starts, looking for the jab as a weapon rather than a way to set up the right hand, which is landing very infrequently.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, he could totally win this.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just not a fighter who can, like, pull himself back into fights where he's struggling. And again, I don't think it's a heart thing. I think he just...
Oh no.
He can't fight. He literally can't fight on instinct in the same way that lots of fighters can, because he's just not an instinctively good fighter.
He's clunky, yeah. And one thing that really...
So when he gets hurt, he's just much, much worse.
Yeah. One thing that really stood out to me, the listeners can go and watch for this. It's an interesting little detail. Is Joshua getting it wrong with his pivots over and over in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
He would jab and pivot without adjusting the lead foot, so that he would end up sort of turning his back on Dubois. This resulted in one of the early knockdowns. I can't recall which right now. It must have been the one in the third round, maybe. Oh no, that was one where he ran out and tried to throw a left hook blind and got jabbed. And then, but that was another one where he then pivoted and it wasn't even really a knockdown. He lost his feet because he flung himself off balance. He's like overdoing these footwork moves. There's other times where he jabs and swings the back foot around and then just brings it back to the same angle he started from. It's like that part of the movement is baked into how he jabs, but he's not actually using it to improve his position. It's like the foot just swings around and then he's off balance. Or if he does pivot, he hasn't adjusted the lead foot, so he's not facing Dubois anymore. And he's suddenly in terrible trouble. This is just one of those like clunky details that stood out to me, where it's like, Joshua's technique is just not fluid.
Mm-hmm.
But more credit to Daniel Dubois. Of course, people may know that he had a really close fight himself with Alexander Usyk, with a very controversial moment where he hurt Usyk with a unquestionably low blow, not to the cup though, and not to the balls. It was low on the torso, which is a foul in boxing. And then Usyk took all the time he needed to recover because there was a foul called. And a bunch of people have made a bunch of hay out of this. I mean, I think you and I, as you said before, Phil, we're very much of the opinion that, like, if that hadn't been called, are we to assume that Usyk would have crumbled? Or would he have probably found a way to recover? I mean, it's still a what if, but...
I think he, as far as I remember, he was trying to get back into the fight, and then... his corner was just like, no, take the time. And he was like, yeah, you know what?
Why not?
Sure.
I got hit low. Yeah, I mean, it's Alexander Usyk. We've seen him stunned before. That's not the only time it's happened, even in just his heavyweight run. But the prospect of them fighting again is certainly very interesting. And, again, I just think Dubois is, he is dumb as a box of rocks. that really came through. I got a Dominic Cruz, Cody Garbrandt vibe from both the pre-fight talk and the fight itself, in this case. But as a fighter, like, he's just a very straightforward, effective boxer. Decent footwork, particularly when he's sort of in his jabbing mode. He knows both how to land that jab effectively and how to use it to get his feet in position for the right hand. And that right hand was just a nightmare for Joshua because he couldn't deal with the jab. And because he couldn't deal with the jab, he was constantly out of position, and the right hand was just catching him blind. And then again, keeping his cool in the exchanges, particularly that last one when he was hurt, keeping his cool and just very patiently, not overthrowing, as Joshua, who was the one going for the finish, was doing. Just sending in short shots, well placed. I think a really credible performance from Dubois, who, as a heavyweight, is I think just 27 years old. So,
yep, believe so.
He probably has a promising future at the top of boxing's heavyweight division, for a few years yet. Whereas, how old is Usyk? What is he, 35?
Yeah, Joshua's 34.
37. Usyk is 37.
Jesus.
Fury, of course, is around that age or older. Like, Daniel Dubois has just got a huge breakout win. And he's possibly not yet in his prime. So.
I think we've seen sort of that generation of boxers is just, slowly starting to slide out of the limelight where they held it, which they held for so long. It's Usyk and Fury are still holding on to that, as the undisputed number 1 and number 2 now. But Wilder is pretty much, Wilder is definitely no longer in that kind of picture.
Yeah.
Joshua is no longer in that kind of picture. It's the changing of the guard is, if not here, then right around the corner.
It's underway. Yeah. Well, at least British people will still have a chance to be annoying about boxing on Twitter.
Yay! That's the most important thing.
Because Dubois is a Londoner. They were really annoying about Joshua. They were annoying about Fury. They were really into Dillian White for some reason, like vastly overestimating his chances in some tough matchups. Dubois, they're going to have a very good reason to be annoying and proud of a British boxer.
All that really matters.
That's right. All right. Well, definitely check that one out, you MMA only listeners. If you haven't seen it, it's a heavyweight slobber knocker. Like you're going to have a hard time not enjoying it if you like seeing people punch each other, and it will be a good introduction to a guy that you're probably going to be hearing a lot more about in the coming years. But with that, let's take a break. When we come back, the rest of this French UFC card. We've got Nasruddin Imavov versus Brendan Allen sitting in the co-main slot. William Gomi is taking on Joanderson Brito, which seems like it will go horribly for him. City Kickboxing's Kevin Jousset is fighting Brian Battle. And blue chip prospect Waylaid Morgan Charriere is also making his return. I don't know if we're going to hit all of that, but we are going to talk about what we can after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Nasruddin Imavov, Brendan Allen. Those are the two men fighting in the co-main event of this card. How do you feel about Nasruddin Imavov, Phil?
I actually quite like Nasruddin Imavov.
Yeah? He still leaves me kind of cold. I don't know why. Is it just unfair? Is it, anti-French bias?
Almost certainly, yeah.
Well, you can't fault me for that, you of all people.
Yeah, obviously we've got to do the thing where we're from, like, England and America.
Yeah.
And we're both, like, Wow, check out the person from that country. Everyone hates them. Meanwhile,
sort of being the
not like famously popular England and America.
sort of the snobby rich kids in the school shitting on the ugly orphan child who's the protagonist of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's just that. I just think, I don't know. Why do you like Imavov? What gets you going with Imavov?
Cause he's trying to be good.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's all I really care about a lot of the time. Like, again, he's sort of a bit like Anthony Joshua. I get the impression that he's maybe not the most, like, naturally fluid fighter in the world.
I think
he jabs,
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't even say I think he's not a fluid technician. I think he's just limited. I would say Imavov has a good jab and a very sharp right hand. And, is also sort of, prone to very long periods of doing nothing. And also, prone to getting tired despite not seeming to do that much. I just think he's, I don't know. I think he strikes me as a fighter that works at middleweight, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
that's for sure. I mean, because he's essentially, he's running the Izzy game plan without the fear or the, years of experience at an extremely high level.
Yeah.
He's going to jab and low kick people a bunch. Like, people were terrified of Izzy doing that, but it's Nasruddin Imavov. It's just like, maybe we'll just, and pass that and punch you in the face.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm never going to get over, the two-way frustration I felt watching that fight he had with Roman Dolidze. Where it was like Dolidze fought the worst fight of his entire life. And Imavov went to a majority decision with him. He was like, it felt like he was winning the whole time, and yet it still ended up being functionally a very close fight. I mean, it's clearly Imavov's fight, but it's like you have a sitting duck in front of you. He strikes me a bit like Darren Till. I just don't know that there's that much depth.
Yeah.
He kind of runs out of ideas pretty fast. If he was more of a jabber, obviously, you know me, I would like him more. If he was more contented, like if you have only one idea, but it's jab, I'm on board. But if you have only one idea and it's 1-2 or two ideas and it's 1-2 and lead right hand, and the jab is never a goal in and of itself, and it doesn't do anything except set up the backhand, I start to get frustrated. I'm minimizing him a bit. I mean, Imavov's, he's got a fearsome array of punches. It's just, he's missing some connective tissue from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's taking on Brendan Allen, though. And to determine who wins that, I say we use a system I've devised called the Strickland barometer. Is it better or worse than Sean Strickland to have Nasruddin Imavov walking you down as you sort of anxiously circle the perimeter of the octagon? And I would say it's at least a wash. Which means I'm picking Imavov.
Yeah, I don't know about, Allen is, again, he's one of these fighters where I just find him really difficult to get a handle on. Because he's just someone who tries very, very hard. And again, that's something that I value quite a lot.
Yeah.
Is that he's just going to really make it work for himself. And he'll be as aggressive as he needs to be, and he'll throw down with people on the feet to get them punching with him, and then he'll go for takedowns and all that kind of stuff.
He will grapple with absolutely everyone, which I always respect. Even like super dangerous, feared grapplers, Allen doesn't give a fuck. He will grapple with you, and he usually comes out on top.
Yeah, and I thought his rematch with Chris Curtis was good, like genuinely pretty impressive. He took a lot away from their first fight. He was like, I need to throw more in combination with this guy. I can't let him be the only body puncher.
I have to circle.
Yeah. Again, it was still pretty close. And he is another weird example of the way that the UFC obviously tends to book people on parallel tracks. Because one of the reasons that he is, you can say that he's not scared to grapple with anyone, is that he's been on a grappler track.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, far away from the much shorter and funner road, which took, say, Alex Pereira to a UFC title in the middleweight division.
Yeah, there's a couple of them sprinkled in. Of course, he fought Strickland, he fought Curtis twice, but we're talking Jotko, Muniz, Paul Craig, Jacob Malkoon, who can box, but is very much a wrestler as well. A lot of wrestlers and grapplers in there.
Yeah. Which means that he's sort of been able to make this work as an aggressive striker on the feet, and someone who can more than handle his own should it hit the mat. Being like a much sort of, being a very kind of Ersatz Diaz brother for the division.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work if he's like chasing someone down who's just circling off and hitting him?
I don't know that he's gonna be able to chase Imavov down or willing to. I mean, he has not taken that aggressive striking approach against any of the strikers he's fought. Chris Curtis. Yeah. Curtis and Strickland both got to pressure him for pretty much the entirety of all three of those fights. And I think it's an MMA brain thing. Like, that feels like the safer way to approach these guys, but in reality, we've saw that Allen he barely scraped by in that second Curtis fight. He didn't make it look like Jack Hermanson did. We'll say that much.
Yeah.
Doesn't really get how to, circle in such a way that the opponent can't just barge in and hit you.
Yeah.
So I'd be kind of surprised.
Yeah, their other shared opponent was, of course, Chris Curtis, and
yeah.
And as I said, I was impressed with Allen for that rematch against Curtis, and that's because I expected Curtis to kind of smoke him again,
right?
And instead, he just made it a very tough, very nip-tuck fight, which he just about won.
Yeah.
But like conversely, Imavov against Curtis, it was called off because of the head clash and so on, but it was looking super bad for Curtis.
Yeah. Imavov is one of those guys.
He could not get into range.
Imavov is one of those guys who is locked in from the start of the fight. He's really sharp right away. Yeah, and given that this is only a 3-rounder, particularly if Allen doesn't press, it's hard for me to see Allen really taxing Imavov's stamina in the way that I think he would need to win. And I think it's hard for me to see him getting the takedowns he also needs to win if Imavov is going to be pressuring him. And Imavov is more than happy to pressure if the opponent doesn't really fight for the center.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about Imavov is that I was expecting him to lose to Jared Cannonier as well. Like, both of these guys have like modestly impressed me lately. Mm-hmm. And he shows that, like, if he's able to fight his fight, he can hold it even against a like very physically potent fighter like Cannonier.
Yeah,
like, he's not going to get knackered fighting the way he wants to fight.
Right. Yeah,
which is completely crucial. And yeah, as you said, it looks like Allen will at the very least, have to be kind of forced into having the fight that he needs to. And by that point, he's likely going to be around in the hole.
Yeah. If not getting hurt, I mean.
Yeah.
You know, he got hurt by Curtis in both of their fights, knocked out in their first one. Sean Strickland knocked him out too. Aggressive strikers who press him to the fence. Brendan Allen is not a sophisticated defensive striker. Let's put it like that.
No. Enthusiastic.
He's very enthusiastic. Yeah. He's so excited to win and put that hat on. But, yeah, I think I'm taking Imavov here.
Yeah, I think you kind of got to.
Mm-hmm.
Allen is someone who like continually overperforms.
He's
sort
on
of like a startlingly good record.
He's got to be on the longest win streak in the division, probably, right? He's 7, 8 in a row?
Something like that. Yeah,
8 fights in a row. Yeah.
But yeah, notably all against people who are reasonably good style matchups for him in one way or another. No one who's just going to shut him out on the feet, and no one, and still not often the highest tier of counter grappler.
Yeah, I mean, he was not expected to.
He's never fought like Fluffy Hernandez, has he?
I don't think so. No. Yeah.
That would be a cool fight.
You know, I would love to see it. Yeah, I think that would lead to a
Sean Brady, for that matter,
or Sean Brady.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was not expected to beat Muniz the way he did. Muniz was really streaking, and
I'm sorry, my bad. I actually saw Sean Brady's a welterweight, isn't he?
Yes, he is. God damn it, Phil! You're an idiot for making me not correct you
moron.
Immediately. You know, he was not expected to beat Muniz. I mean, that was not purported to be a great style matchup for him, but it certainly does not align with the kind of fighters we've seen really crush Brendan Allen in the past. So, yeah, should be interesting. I mean, yeah, it's hard to imagine it being anything but an entertaining fight. Again, can't really complain. Let's just briefly mention the next fight here. William Gomi is fighting Joanderson Brito. Gomi is a guy, actually it might be Gomis. For some reason, he's the only Frenchman who pronounces the S on the end of his name. I don't know what the explanation is, or if the UFC desk are simply wrong about his pronunciation. I think he is a guy who has really profited by the nature of modern UFC, not even matchmaking, but the nature of the modern UFC roster. Because he is a very negative, kind of evasive style of fighter. Really tries to sort of take the fight out of the fight most of the time. And his wins do not hold a lot of water in my book. He has fought 13-3 Jarno Aarons, who I think was a really clunky and clumsy fighter at the time they fought. He really made some improvements very shortly after that. That went to a majority decision. He edged out a split decision against 7-0 Frank Marshall, who is just, was ripe for that sort of prospect loss, being just a hyper aggressive young hothead with very little sort of structure to his game. And then his latest win was a KO, a body kick KO over, Yanis Gemuri, who is not very good. He was basically brought in to lose, and then they brought him in again to lose to Peyton Talbot even more horrifically. But he is, kind of a worse Gomi. And now he's fighting Joanderson Brito, who is actually good.
Yes.
An insanely, athletically gifted fighter, super powerful, potent grappler, big puncher, hyper aggressive. There's probably going to be some moments early where Brito is swinging and missing, and Gomi is making it look like it's going to happen, and then there's going to be a point where his ass hits the fence and he loses his footing, and Brito either flings him to the ground or knocks him down to the ground. That's what I'm calling for this one.
Yeah, probably. I think Gomes is in general, he's a bit of the, what if Cyril Gahn, but in a good division.
Yeah. Very much so.
I think they're both MMA Factory guys, right?
Probably. I don't know.
I believe so. But yeah, with the difference that Gahn's main thing is that he has a genuinely a good jab and sense of timing, and Gomes' main thing is that he's just got a really sneaky lead kicking game.
Yeah.
That just people aren't ready for, and it's very disorienting because he can just, kick 2-3 times in quick succession, hop back or something. And yeah, I think it's just very disorienting, especially for people who want to just, fence with him at mid-range. But yeah, much like Gahn, if he's asked to do anything outside of the few things that he spends most of his time doing, he will look utterly dreadful.
Yeah.
If he steps forward and throws his rear hand, he looks like he's never thrown a punch in his life.
Right. Yeah. And I gotta say, long range kicker is listeners will know, the last striking style I expect to continue working as you climb the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Just being a guy who is almost exclusively a kicker and has thus far relied on the fact that you've been fighting a bunch of relatively inexperienced MMA fighters who have no idea how to actually apply pressure and maintain it. I'm not saying Brito is all that sophisticated either, but Brito's just a beast. He can just fly forward and make something happen. So it's just hard. It just looks like a big physical mismatch.
It could feasibly be one of those ones where he's disorienting enough that Brito gets confused and so on. But yeah, I mostly just expect Brito to flatten him.
The last time Brito got mad, didn't work out for his opponent. He was fighting Jonathan Pierce, who took him down and was controlling him. And then
yes.
And then he complained to the ref, and Brito made fun of him for tattling, and then obliterated him.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, frustrating Brito's the solution. I think I just think the guy only has one direction and one aim in mind, and that is to finish you. Kevin Jousset is also fighting on this card. Now, Kevin Jousset, I kind of like, because Kevin Jousset is Jab Man. And you know how much I love any version of Jab Man that ever appears in the octagon. He's, as I described him to you before, the City Kickboxing's resident unathletic oaf. Which kind of works for him, because unlike a lot of the more talented guys on that team, because, he's not like he's not a joke physically. He's just slower, a little more ungainly, even than the likes of Dan Hooker. But the result is that he's I think a more consistently solid fighter than a lot of those guys tend to be. And really, really carved Sankinon into multiple discrete pieces, mostly with the jab in his last performance. He's taking on Brian Battle, the only tough winner in recent memory to have made any impact whatsoever in the UFC. And I still don't really know what to make of Brian Battle. I mean, I'll say this. I'm not particularly impressed with Brian Battle, but he does tend to sort of outperform my expectations.
Yeah. I always kind of think that he's pretty mad, and then he does that bit better than I expected him to every single time.
Yeah. He's a clutch kind of fighter. I mean, he's opportunistic. He doesn't break easily. And he's big. He's big and he hits hard too. So he's got those things going for him. He just strikes me as a very sort of disordered fighter. My instinct is that he is actually going to have a lot of trouble with the straight punches of Kevin Jousset, provided Jousset can take what's coming back at him. It just looks like that kind of matchup. Yep. This is the style I would expect to exploit a kind of a fighter like Battle who's finding big moments with a ton of empty space between them. So,
I don't know whether this booking is mean for Kevin Doucet or not, because I think, as you said, he is French, like, so, like, he gets to fight in France, but, yeah, he is a city kickboxing guy as well, so they are just making him fly.
Yeah, he had to fly 18 hours
as
around
far
the world.
around the world as is possible to fly.
Well, maybe he's got family there and he was able to go earlier, and who knows?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
But yes, I tend to agree. But again, like, I just seem to criminally underrate Brian Battle all the time.
Yeah, me too.
I just think of him as being, like, a low-tier version of the Brendan Allen archetype, where he's gonna, like, try everything, and I just think, but he's not very good, is he? And it's not gonna work. And then it somehow does, and yeah,
and I mean, it doesn't tend to just work. He tends to finish people. I mean, weirdly, the only guy he didn't finish in the UFC was Tresean Gore, who has completely collapsed after his run on The Ultimate Fighter. A much more typical case of somebody who shines on tough, finally getting to the UFC. But Battle, I mean, he is consistent in his way. Like, he's pretty unflappable. He's aggressive. If you swing on him, he is just going to swing with you. You create an exchange. He never turns it down. He's willing to eat a shot, willing to eat 2 shots to give 1. And, that goes a long way. I mean, I suppose if you think of him in the context of the age of Drekus, it sort of makes sense. He just put a lot of points into being aggressive and indefatigable and hitting pretty hard. And again, I have to point out that he is a very big welterweight. But yeah, Jusei is tall, he's lanky, he's got a jab, he throws good straight punches. Provided he doesn't get too badly hurt at some point, I think he is going to rack up a lot of steady damage on Battle.
Yeah, I kind of want to pick him. Maybe I'll pick Brian Battle under my new philosophy that I should just pick aggressive guys who suck.
Yeah.
It does seem to work.
Just pick the meatheads.
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe I'll pick him.
Yeah.
Also, his name is Brian the Butcher Battle.
Yeah.
So lame.
Bro, you do not need a nickname. Your name is Brian Battle.
Yeah.
It just dilutes it to have a nickname. You already have the dopest name of fighter.
It's not even a relevant nickname.
No, it sucks. It shouldn't. If your name is Brian Battle, you do not get to have a nickname. You're only doing yourself a disservice. Yeah, just pick him, and he's gonna win, and he's gonna, in his like shockingly deep voice, he's gonna be like, "I told all you French fuckers I was gonna do it." In the post-fight interview, he's like a much smaller, younger man who sounds exactly like Stipe Miocic. Yeah, you know what? As a main card, not too bad, this lineup. I didn't think they had that many.
Mostly, like, the fights are people I've heard of, and they almost all match up to be fun.
Yeah. We didn't get to Morgan Charrier. He had a really, really impressive UFC debut, against Manolo Zucchini. Again, don't take that too far, but this was on the heels of a little run in I think he was in Cage Warriors, where he had been he's a young veteran, you know. He had been a guy who was incredibly athletically potent, but was just like letting fights slip away by not actually pushing for them. And then he had a big win over Pedro Sousa with a stoppage just before coming to the UFC. The win over Diego Silva and Pedro Sousa, both stoppages, seemed that he had like ended his run of being a sort of anti-fighter, a defense-first survivor rather than a round winner. He followed that up with the win over Zucchini, and then he fought at this point it has to be said, super underrated Chepe Mariscal, who has done fantastically in the UFC, and lost a close split decision in large part because Mariscal was so aggressive, it kind of brought out some of Charrier's worst impulses once again. So we will see how he bounces back and if he can finally sort of shake off the worst parts of being a young veteran, or if that's just going to be his fate until he's 32 years old and realizes he can crush everybody because he's a beast. Pretty solid lineup as far as all the pulling out every French or remotely French fighter they have on the roster. Could have done worse. It's not as if you compare this to the undercard of the Noche event, it's no worse at all.
Oh,
it's very comparable.
As far as the Matt Frivola should be good fun.
Looks fun.
I'll go wrong with Matt Frivola, and as far as ZM is also like decently entertaining.
Yeah, Taylor Lapillus is down there on the card. You know, we got some fun stuff sprinkled throughout, and the main card itself is fairly solid. So we should have some good stuff to talk about next week, when of course we will also be, unless there's another delay, we will be looking forward to UFC 307, I believe. Yeah, October 5th. Oh, am I doing the thing again? No, okay. All right, this time it lines up. October 5th is next weekend, the weekend after this one, and that is the fraudulent title defense for Alex Pereira against Khalil Roundtree, which I am nonetheless very interested to see. So
that'll be fun, meaningless and fun.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's light heavyweight.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll do it, I think, for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Find us on the Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson, at Boxing Bush, and we'll get back to you next week. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.